Dad gave our family business to my lazy brother. He messed up, almost causing a customer to die, and now Dad's begging me to come back and fix it. I, 28F, threw my dad a retirement party somewhat over a month ago. Having maintained our family restaurant for practically his whole life, he was retiring from management. Now, at about 62, he told us he was too exhausted to continue and wanted the company to be passed on to the next generation. Since I had given this restaurant the past 5 years of my life, I very mistakenly assumed he meant me. My family runs 2 other restaurants across the city in addition to an Italian franchise. My uncle runs one, the other is supervised by his daughter. But the most often used branch is ours, and my father is the official owner. For background, my uncle is not really the biological brother of Dad. This all began when my grandfather built his first restaurant, where business first started. Actually, our property is the original one. The restaurant my grandfather opened with my grandmother operated for numerous years until my father assumed control. Then he grew the company by adding 2 other eateries at separate sites. My uncle came in at that point. When we first launched the second restaurant, he left his employment and began working there. His daughter took charge of that place. Since the company has always stayed within the family, when Dad announced his retirement a few weeks before I hosted the celebration, I naturally anticipated him to turn it over to me, since my uncle wanted to retire in a few years anyway, and he is almost the same age as my father, maybe a few years younger. He was not a competitor for the firm. Given my 5-year dedication to the first restaurant, his daughter's 2 years of running the new store represents significantly less experience than I have. I abandoned my corporate job to work with my father ever since I was 23. I wanted to one day inherit the family firm and carry it to unprecedented success. Since I was the strongest applicant to the company, I simply thought it would be me. My cousin was too young and unskilled to manage on her own. My uncle was retiring soon. I knew then it would be me, though it was somewhat stupid of me not to demand a written agreement. My father never mentioned it straightforwardly. I assumed this was merely understood. Still, at the very last instant, my father threw me a curveball. He said on the day of his retirement celebration that my bratty younger brother would be inheriting the company. I have a younger brother and an Charles, 34 meters. My older brother took the medical route. He is a surgeon and shows no enthusiasm for the restaurant industry. Derek, 26 meters. My younger brother spends nothing at all and does nothing all day. Nobody in the family likes him. He is a brat of good value for nothing, though I have no issue with his lack of talents or his lack of activity all day. I absolutely find his attitude unacceptable. Though he has nothing to show for his life, he behaves as though he is the best and deserves every nice thing that comes his way. Mostly, it's my parents pushing this behavior. Anytime Charles and I try to talk about it, they shut us down and tell us he needs positive support so he could investigate job paths and avoid lifetime freeloading dependent on his parents. A few years ago, he graduated from community college. Since then, he has been let go from at least 5 different companies. He has a major attitude issue, so he can never make things stick, though I'm not sure why. He believes this. He feels he is on the same level as God personally, and that nobody else can challenge him. We have to put up with it since we are family. But in the actual world, least of all his employers, none would accept this kind of behavior. It is, therefore, not surprising that he has been let off from every position within a few months. He is not very talented in anything, and even the jobs he worked at were guaranteed by my father via his contacts. For himself, Derek truly cannot accomplish. He is simply a huge screw up and has no idea about his future direction. Since he was let go from his last job 2 years ago, he has been lounging about our house, draining our parents for the past several years. The worst aspect is his lack of any guilt or regret over it. Our parents ignore him and let him lie this way instead of intervening, which makes it quite annoying. It is unfair, particularly because Charles and myself were continuously urging us to improve. Not to seem unappreciative, as Charles and I are doing in our life, but it stinks to see them be so forgiving of Derek. Still, I find him to be a somewhat spoiled brat that absolutely bothers me. As children, we were all wonderful friends, but since high school, things have changed and I hardly get along with Derek in the least. Everyone was rather surprised when my dad said Derek would be inheriting the company, as he also lacks knowledge of the company or any notion of how things run. A few months before I organized the celebration, my father had announced his. Everyone knew about it. Family members as well as workers. Having been my father's right-hand man, or lady, in my case, I naturally anticipated to take over after he retired. I regret not having a decent discussion about it I had taken it for granted, and perhaps that was the reason I came undone. I regarded this as evidence that he was intending to leave me in control, even though he had expressed things about what he wanted me to do once he retired a few. I trusted my father. Therefore I never thought of him maybe not leaving the company. To me, he had never offered me a justification not to, though he handled Derek differently. That did not mean he mistreated me. As an employee as well as a daughter, he was always incredibly caring and polite with me. Still, I decided to throw him a party when he announced his retirement. It never occurred to me that he hadn't revealed who his successor would be, since I simply knew it would be me. I was shocked on the day the party was scheduled when he chose to declare Derek would be taking charge. Not only me, everyone at the party, from my mother herself to all the staff, was in shock. Everyone had assumed I would inherit the company, particularly because I had spent 5 years working at the restaurant striving for perfection. Still, after all of my effort, Derek was scheduled to inherit. I found none of it logical. It didn't really dawn on me until my father brought Derek to his side and he smugly declared he embraced his new post. Tears and total devastation drove me literally from the restaurant. 2 minutes later, my father trailed me outdoors. He wants to clarify that he made this very tough choice for specific reasons. Though I was unhappy, I chose to give him some time. Still, his motives were equally illogical and foolish as his choice. He knew it. He informed me that Derek was really useless and that this affected his decision. Derek had been sitting at home for the past 2 years, while my father had been trying very hard to convince him to go out, hunt for a job, and engage in meaningful life activity. Derek took everything lightly. Now my father reasoned that perhaps placing Derek in a position requiring responsibility, such as running the restaurants, would compel him to rise up and improve his output. Derek's heart wasn't in it, according to my father, because he was working for someone else and lacked an interest in his former employment. However, my father thought Derek would have more of a stake and would be driven to be a better worker, since this would be his own business, and if not, at minimum, it would get him out of the home. Then my father informed me that he still wanted me at the restaurant to perform exactly what I used to do for Derek, to be always present for him. He informed me Derek would only be the nominal head. I would be the actual boss. This would, according to my father, inspire Derek to become well. To me, that was quite nasty. Knowing that I was quite capable of doing a far better job than Derek, he expected me to be his shadow and assistant. Always. I am my own person. I am not the babysitter for my brother. By then, I had worked hard enough to land the job my father had just given Derek. I was still rather offended and not changed even with the justification. I warned my dad he would lose me permanently, or he could undo his words and offer me the job he had just granted Derek. I meant it. I had an ultimatum to offer him. Regretfully, we then engaged in a somewhat nasty argument. He informed me I wasn't thinking about my brother's future and I was being selfish and irrational by not considering mine. He was acting selfishly, I told him. We found ourselves fighting in this way. Having nothing to say left, I cut him off after that. He refused to hand the job away from Derek to someone who rightly earned it. Me? I made up my mind not to return to the restaurant after I felt so degraded. My last day spent there was the day following the retirement celebration. 1 month after that, I still haven't gone back to the restaurant, though I don't ask about the business. I have stayed in contact with my and Charles. They know how things are going, but they also know it bothers me and I don't want to talk about it. I therefore had no idea how the restaurant was performing until a few days ago. Nothing had truly altered on that front as I stopped talking to my father following that argument and avoided Derek. Anyhow, after leaving the restaurant, I had also begun submitting applications for other employment. Like any other employee, I did get paid for my work there, and I have some money right now to cover temporary needs. I reasoned I could survive off of my funds till I discovered another activity I wanted to engage in. I had even intended to travel next week, but right now I'm not sure, since I might have to return to the restaurant. The cause is like I had anticipated. My brother messed up quite extensively. For some reason, my dad felt it would be a good idea to let him do anything he wanted, without supervision, to inspire confidence in him. He knew nothing about running a. Apparently, Derek's emotions came before the family, business and other pragmatic issues. Derek had been cutting costs on components in addition to making a lot of careless and foolish financial mistakes from the beginning. Now, it's causing them major difficulties. We offer a separate vegan menu and accommodate vegans, so that none of non-vegan items come into touch with vegan meals in the kitchen for ethical reasons. We also set aside space specifically for vegan cuisine cooking, but in his infinite wisdom, Derek closed that to create room in the kitchen and began tampering vegan goods in order to save money. This would only be a matter of time before blowback occurred. 2 days ago, the unavoidable happened. Derek had told staff members to use conventional dairy milk wherever they could, avoid using the more unsafe, higher-priced soy milk. That moron overlooked the fact that some people are really allergic to dairy, not just vegan for fun. You might fairly predict what followed. A client ordered a milk-based dessert and requested soy milk or another milk substitute to be used rather than ordinary dairy. Usually, one of our regular staff members would have used the alternative as asked and disregarded Derek's ludicrous orders. Regretfully, Derek had chosen a fresh, inexperienced man and given him rigorous instructions to document anyone in the kitchen defying his directions. Derek had discovered that the regular staff members were neglecting him since they were too quickly running out of substitute materials. He recruited this new guy as he wanted someone to spy for him. Sadly, this new employee ignored the customer's request and used conventional dairy milk for the dessert, following Derek's directions exactly. He did a really poor job with it as well. Things went south rapidly, and the client experienced a strong allergic response. They now seem ready to sue the eatery. I know all of this since my dad contacted me in the evening a few days ago, the day the incident occurred, to let me know what happened. He looked to be panicking. He told me he had sacked Derek right away since he had no idea what Derek had been doing behind his back. He now asked me to return and rejoin him. He was presenting me with the job I had long sought. It was strange that my brother wanted me to come back now, having screwed up just as I had predicted. From the events of 1 month ago, I was still somewhat wounded and disturbed, hence on the phone, I laughed heartily at their predicament. I informed him I never would be returning under any conditions. Just as he had embarrassed me at the retirement party, I said that should he truly want me to come back, I anticipated a public apology in front of the family and all the staff. Before handing me the job, I also wanted him to admit his errors and declare he had sacked Derek. Given what happened during the party, I do not believe I was asking for too much. My father's behaviors were just intolerable, and they had severely wounded me. Since now he was the one depending on me, I thought I was merely asking him to make things right. But my mother felt my requests were a bit excessive. During the phone call, even my father claimed he would not be doing any of it. The company was just as much mine as it was his. He informed me. He stated what I was asking of him was ridiculous and humiliating, even though he acknowledged he might have made a mistake. So am I the asshole, Ida, for asking my father to publicly apologize if he wants me to rejoin the family company following the choice of my brother to inherit it over me. Update 1. Hi everyone who took the time to comment on my first post and suggestions and encouragement. First, thank you very much for your concern on this matter. It truly means a lot to me. Regarding what I decided to do, I gave it some thought over a few days and concluded I would be returning to the company. Though I had to set aside my pride, the decision wasn't simple, as at the end of the day, I have spent 5 years of my life at that place. I want to be the one to drive the company ahead, hence nothing else can change that. Given that my dad won't be around permanently, I truly want to see it flourish rather than be closed down. As I have already said, Charles has no interest in the restaurant, and Derek obviously lacks the skills or ability to run a company of that kind. It thus has to be me. It merely does. My uncle and cousin, who oversee the other 2 branches, agreed I should return when I spoke with them. They think that the restaurant is properly mine. Hence, if my father is asking me to come back, I should put my past behind me and pursue what I love. To be honest, I would have preferred it if my father had publicly apologized, but I don't want to start a public celebration or gloat over Derek being right. That would not make me very happy as compared to the gratification the success of our restaurant will provide. I now understand I have to choose my battles and have opted to let this one pass for my own benefit. I chatted with Dad this morning. That was a highly civil and official exchange. Though we will talk about them eventually, we decided to temporarily keep our history apart for now. Right now, we provide the situation under current utmost attention to negotiate and get a settlement. We have set up a meeting with our lawyers and the impacted consumer out of court, as she has been continuously tweeting about us on social media. She hasn't acquired much traction thus far, so we have been lucky. Nevertheless, this won't be the case for long, hence we must squish this before it becomes too huge. Update 2. After a lengthy period, yesterday I personally met my father. We met before our customers meeting, and one last time we spoke with our lawyer on everything. Seeing him after so long was odd since 5 years ago I had seen him practically daily. Until I actually saw him, I had no idea how much I missed him. Since our lawyer handled much of the conversation, we didn't interact much. We had to concentrate on that, but I could see there was still plenty we needed to talk about. Though later we will have to deal with everything. Now was not the proper time. Neither has he brought up anything regarding the event from a month ago, nor has he adequately apologized to me. Still, Between us things were friendly and civil, which was a comfort, because this was our first in-person meeting. Following our major argument, though I expected things to be strange, happily they were not. It had been some time, so my father requested me to come home to see my mom after the conference. Since the retirement party, I have not visited home. I had to turn down though, since I had a prior obligation, that of attending an evening engagement party for a buddy. Fascinatingly, when I questioned my dad whether Derek lived at home, he informed me he did not. I really wanted to know where Derek was living and how it came about, but my dad didn't provide any more information and made it plain he didn't want to talk about it, so I stopped there. Later on I spoke with Charles, and he informed me that Derek had moved out a few days following his termination, but he was unsure whether our parents had requested him to leave or whether Derek went on his own. Though things remain unknown, I intend to discuss it with my dad and work out what is happening. The client's meeting turned out better than anticipated. Given the situation, I had thought it would be difficult. What transpired was a major ethical transgression and never would have happened if my father or I had been in charge. The consumer, however, was reasonable. She said that the reason she had threatened to sue and complain so much on social media was that the manager had insisted that she was at fault rather than owning the error. She had, he said, not mentioned her dairy allergy or asked for soy milk. The fact that she was blamed when knew it was not her fault infuriated her the most. Once we knew the whole truth, we knew how much of a moron Derek had been. The client had refused to interact with us prior to this without her lawyer present. She had stated in her social media posts how the management of the restaurant treated her, but she had not gone into great detail since she feared defamation claims. She hadn't completely explained the matter because Derek had got in touch with her accusing her of lying and threatening to sue her. Until now, my dad and I had not known exactly what transpired. The waiter who ordered her sided with Derek since he feared losing his employment. I don't blame him, even if it means covering for their company. These folks need their jobs and are not ready to jeopardize them. Derek, the new guy he hired, never turned on him. Hence he also insisted that the server had not been told about the soy milk, which resulted in the ordinary dairy milk being used. Then Derek and the new guy claimed the customer was trying to obtain money from us and lying to discredit the business. We told the client that Derek, the guy in charge, had been let go. So right now, we were running everything ourselves. Nothing like this will never, ever happen again, we assured her. Fortunately, we reached an understanding. She agreed to remove her social media entries and let it go. Although we lost quite a lot of money in the process, at least we were able to tidy Derek's mess. My dad and I can at last relax. Update 3. Hi, I have never been happy. I returned to the restaurant a month ago. To be honest, it took me some time to see how unhappy I had been absent from the workplace. Though I have problems with my father, I love this place. I am going to soar to new heights, as I wish. Regarding my father, we are working things out and have come quite far. Having spoken with my parents, we as a family have decided we should spend more time together. A few weeks back, after returning to the restaurant, I had a lengthy conversation with my dad. He and my mother said they handled Charles and me poorly. They wanted to develop Derek to a point where he could compete with us and not feel inadequate. They knew he was the weakest link among us, but they raised his ego to an irrational level. In doing this, now Derek sees the world of himself without really trying to get better. The day my father dismissed him, Derek moved out and shut everyone off since his pride suffered. Later, my dad discovered Derek is working at a nearby video game store and living with a friend. At least he's trying to make it on his own and acting. It's good for him. Every weekend my family gathers for dinner, including Charles and his wife. Derek has been invited multiple times. It would be disrespectful not to, but he has not responded as asked. It scarcely counts to me since I have nothing to do with him anymore. Though I would like him in my life, I wish him the best. For me, hanging around my family has been fantastic. I adore it since my father and I are at last returning to a state of normality. Recently, life has been very wonderful. I have no complaints. At last, I am creating something I believe in and doing what I love. I am back on good terms with my family and I do not think I could ask for more. All a person truly needs to be happy is that